Meanwhile, later this Thursday, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will be sitting down with Donald Trump at the White House. That visit coming just a few days after the French President Emmanuel Macron met Trump to try and boost U.S. relations with the European Union. We're going to talk a bit more about this now with our Washington correspondent, Fraser Jackson, who joins me live from there. Fraser, a big focus of this meeting today going to be the situation in Ukraine and just what the U.S., the U.K. and the EU should be doing about it all.
Yeah, well, the UK Prime Minister has a lot to discuss with President Trump, a lot of different topics of discussion as they try to basically jumpstart this relationship after having met in September and then had a few phone calls since there. But arguably the most anticipated talks centre around Ukraine. Now, the UK has vowed to take a proactive role in future peace processes, including sending UK troops to Ukraine as part of a peacekeeping force. And I'm told that Keir Starmer will be discussing that plan further with Donald Trump. Now, there are still some differences of opinion between the US and the Europeans, which European nations hope can be bridged. Embassy sources say, quote, the Prime Minister will be clear that there can be no negotiations about Ukraine without Ukraine and will recognise the need for Europe to play its part on global defence and step up for the good of collective European security. Now, in that vein, Prime Minister Starmer will tout the UK's recently announced increase in defence spending, what he's called the biggest sustained increase in British defence spending since the Cold War. Now, by 2027, the UK will spend 2.5% of GDP on defence. That's up from the current 2.3%, an increase of about £13 billion a year. Now, the plan is to raise that to 3% of GDP by 2025. Of course, Donald Trump, one of his main bugbears has been that the Europeans aren't pulling their weight in defence spending. Well, this plan was called a strong step from an enduring partner by the US Secretary of Defence, Pete Hegseth. The Prime Minister also hoping that the US will provide security guarantees to Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire, the so-called backstop, which would act as a deterrent for Russia to break any ceasefire agreements. Now, I'm told by sources that this backstop would look more like air defense support, long-range missile support for the Ukrainians, but so far the Americans are reticent to put themselves forward into that position. But on the plane over to DC, Prime Minister Starmer said the reason I say the backstop is so important is that the security guarantee has to be sufficient to deter Putin from coming again. My concern is if there is a ceasefire without a backstop, it will simply give him the opportunity to wait and to come again because his ambition in relation to Ukraine is pretty obvious. So still some distance between where the US and the UK are, but Keir Starmer is hoping to use that relationship, boost that relationship and get this over the line for the Europeans.
Fraser, another big worry, of course, for Keir Starmer, like the European Union, are Trump's threats on raising tariffs. I mean, how much is that going to play a part in these talks there today?
That is the second main pillar of these discussions, really. The UK worried about these trade tariffs that Donald Trump will be bringing in. Of course, the UK no longer a member of the European Union, so it doesn't have that kind of protection almost of being part of a larger bloc. So the thing they're worried about really is the VAT, the value-added tax, which the UK charges at 20%. That, I'm told by sources, is the main source of anxiety as to whether that is something that can get moved past. Diplomatic sources tell me that the UK and the US share a unique and historic relationship based on shared values and a mutual commitment to economic and defence spending. The British Embassy here in the United States said that the UK and the US have one of the biggest trading relationships of any two countries in the world, worth around $400 billion. It generates about 2.5 million jobs across both countries. Now, the British Embassy also pointed out to me that they called this relationship between the US and America fair and balanced, and they said that it was without significant deficits in either direction. Of course, that has been one of the main things that Donald Trump has been pointing out when he's been mentioning these tariffs to other countries. The UK says that their investment relationship between the US and the UK is unwavering and worth over $1.5 trillion. Another area that Prime Minister Starmer hopes to discuss is also going to be AI. The US and the UK are said to be the two Western countries with trillion-dollar technology ecosystems. That's another place that the UK believes there can be more and closer partnership with the United States. So a lot to discuss here in this meeting. And of course, there's some other foreign policy issues like the Middle East as well.
Fraser, thank you for that. That's our Washington correspondent, Fraser Jackson.